How do you know we evolved?
Oh, well, I would say that from this deeper point of view, we know that we didn't, but it's a useful framework within space-time. It's a very useful framework to think about it as evolution.
It's true in some sense, right? It's true in this projection or whatever.
Well, it's like if I'm playing Grand Theft Auto in virtual reality.
Oh,
right?
Great
and
point.
I could say,
trailer just got dropped for Grand Theft Auto 6. Oh my gosh, fantastic.
Right. So if I say, you know, there's some supercomputer I'm interacting with, and all I see is Grand Theft Auto, right? And so I'm racing in my car. Now, I can say I'm racing in a red Ferrari, and my car can go faster than your green Mustang, and so forth. And those may be true statements in the game, but ultimately they're only true of the game. And if I say, but I'm going to go now to a bigger framework, I'm going to look at outside of the Grand Theft Auto world. What is that? Well, it's some supercomputer. Well, now, is it really true that there's a red Ferrari and a green Mustang? Well, no, if you actually look inside the supercomputer, you won't find anything like red Ferraris or green Mustangs anywhere inside there. You'll find bits and so forth. But within the context of the headset, sure, that's the best theory, and that's what you should do. But a good theory of Grand Theft Auto would actually tell you, you know, there's more to life than Grand Theft Auto. It won't tell you that there's a supercomputer, but it will tell you that Grand Theft Auto can't be the whole story. And that's all I'm doing with evolution. It's not the whole story.
I'm trying to focus on that from within the Grand Theft Auto world, from within the headset, there's got to be some sense in which the creationist is wrong, right? That the Earth is 4,000 years old, that we didn't evolve by natural selection. There's some sense in which the creationist is wrong. Okay, it's not a deep sense. My question is, how do you know? How do we know that the creationist is wrong and the Darwinian is right in that headset relative context? And surely you've got to say, well, we used our sensors. We used our sensors to find out that the creationist is wrong. I don't think you can say that if your argument works, because if your argument works, our sensors evolve for truth, not fitness, not truth. We don't know. We don't know if the creationist is right or wrong. That's the worry.
This is the key point. We don't need to believe any of our theories, right? I'm a scientist. I create theories and I evaluate theories. I don't. So all I do is I take the theories, and I'm not stuck inside my theories. I'm the one that creates them and evaluates them. I just look at evolution by natural selection and say, here's the mathematics. The mathematics entails the probability is 0 that I have any true perceptions. That's what that theory says. Now, what I believe about my senses is something different. I may still say, I don't believe that implication of evolution. It's nevertheless an implication of evolution. So I can say that I love evolution. It has all this power, but my senses are not limited. For example, I might say that but the mathematics of evolutionary game theory says that they are limited. Aha. That's what that theory entails. Maybe I want to say that there's a point where I disagree with evolutionary theory. I love it for all this other stuff. But on the other hand, I may say, maybe it's when it says we shouldn't take our perceptions literally, maybe we should interpret that as pointing to this as just a headset. And if that's the case, then I would say, yeah, wow. Evolution actually pointed to space-time as just a headset, and don't take it literally. In which case I would give it a big thumbs up and say, but it doesn't tell us what's next, right? Just like Einstein doesn't tell us what's outside space-time. The new physicists are having to make broad and bold leaps outside of space-time. You have to really go out there. But what you do is you write down your new ideas, and of course, most of them are not even worth it. Most of them are wrong, but every once in a while you get a good idea, and then what you have to do is show that it projects back into space-time and gives you answers that we can test inside space-time. So whatever we come up with outside space-time better project into space-time, and it better give us Einstein, and it better give us evolution by natural selection as the projection. If my theory of so here's how I put it. If my theory of conscious agents outside space-time, when I project it into space-time, doesn't give me physics, Einstein's physics, quantum theory, and it doesn't give me evolution by natural selection as the projection, then I'm wrong. So evolution is a absolute acid test on my deeper theory.
Right, I'm gonna
that's how science works.
One more time, and then I'm gonna give up, because we're not gonna convince each other. That very thing you said then, that my theory had better give me natural selection as a projection. That's a constraint. They better give me that. How do you know it had better give you that? Through using your senses, through using your senses has obviously given you empirical reason to think your theory had better give you that, as opposed to what the creationist would constrain their theory with. And I think if your fitness bits truth argument works, you can't trust your senses. And so, yeah, anyway, go on. That's the last. I'm going
to see. I don't believe evolution. Evolution says that we shouldn't.
No. But you did. I was focusing on the specific claim you just made.
Right. So evolution. So all I'm doing as a scientist is I'm just telling you what this theory entails, and I don't have to believe it. I can say it works over here, and I don't believe this part of it. It's just so I'm not caught in my theory. I'm an evaluator of the theory, and the argument, by the way, is actually quite simple. There are fitness payoff functions, right? Fitness payoff functions are functions that go from whatever the world is, the state of the world, into the payoffs, say from 0 to 100. And you can ask a simple technical question. What is the probability that a generically chosen payoff function would be a homomorphism of any structure in objective reality, like a total order, a partial order, a metric, whatever it might be, a topology? And in every case, the answer is precisely 0, because you would have to, for a fitness function to be a homomorphism, it has to satisfy certain equations. Almost no randomly chosen fitness payoff function will satisfy those equations. It's just that simple. So all I have to do is say, look, evolution by natural selection is an incredibly powerful theory, but it entails almost surely, with probability 1, that no sensory system has ever evolved to see the truth. Now, once I've taken that from evolutionary theory, I can say, well, what could that mean? Well, maybe it can mean that my senses are just a headset, in which case I could be looking beyond this and ask for what's beyond my space-time headset. Or I could just refuse to believe evolutionary theory on that point. I myself think I think evolution might be right. I don't see the truth, and this is just a headset. So that's how I go with it. I say, I love evolutionary theory. It says you're not seeing the truth. I believe it. We're not seeing the truth. It doesn't mean that I'm caught in evolution, because I have this deeper theory that shows that evolution is an artifact, that even time itself is not an insight into the deeper realm. It's an artifact.
So, Philip, why can't Don be saying that Darwinian evolution is some approximation? It's not exactly correct. There's neo-Darwinism and there's EES. So there are various agglomerations or pieces added to Darwinism afterward. In other words, some biologists would agree that the way we traditionally view natural selection, isn't the only mechanism by which we evolve. Okay, so why can't Don say, hey, look, evolution didn't happen in the exact way that we thought. If it did, then it would lead to a contradiction. It could happen in some approximate way, and there could be some underlying mechanisms that are slightly nuanced that produce the wonderful variety we see. And I also don't know, Don, if that's what you're saying. I don't mean to speak for you, by the way. I'm just saying, why can't that be an argument?
Well, so I suppose in the domain in which we're talking about our senses and our conscious experience and the apparent design that seems to be in our conscious experience, we need to appeal. I think I agree with Richard Dawkins. We need to appeal to the truth of natural selection in order to explain that apparent design. But if this argument works, then we can't do that. We can't, because we can't trust our senses to find out that empirical information that we did evolve through natural selection. So the whole thing doesn't get off the ground.
Don, do you have another analogy other than the supercomputer? Because the computer itself implies computation. Computation implies step by step, in which case you can have time. If we're going to abstract time to say that successive generations can also be time, then this supercomputer that we could potentially be part of could also have time in the computational steps. So do you have another analogy?
Well, the example that's not an analogy, but is in fact what we're working on is this Markovian dynamics in which there is no arrow of time. So this is a literal mathematical system that we're working on right now. We published a paper called Fusion. People want to see this.
Right.
Came out in January, called Fusions of Consciousness, and we actually at the end of the paper raise this issue. We point out that our dynamical systems don't need to have an arrow of time, but then we give the proof. We actually have a 3 or 4 line proof that any projection will give you an arrow of time from our system. So what we would love to do is to come up with a dynamical system of conscious agents that projects into space-time. And that's the paper I'm working on right now. That's exactly what I'm working on today, is that mathematical projection. We're making really good progress. And my intent is to show, when we get that projection, that we can get evolution by natural selection in our projected version. So we'll have a theory in which there are no limited resources, there are no organisms competing, no nature red in tooth and claw. But when you take this projection and you lose information, it looks like nature red in tooth and claw. It looks like there's an arrow of time, and all of that is an artifact of the projection. And I'm saying this, there's nothing special about this. This is the way science works. We go from Newton to Einstein. We get Newton as a special case, but there are things Newton can't do. And there's things that Einstein can explain why you can't do them, but you can do them on Einstein. And then you see Newton as a projection. When C goes to infinity, you get Newton as a projection. That's what I'll get Darwin, all of evolution by natural selection, as a projection when I let go of space-time.
Can I make one quick physics point? I would say it's the opposite. I would say that it's with Einstein that you have the limitations. In fact, with Newton, you can do anything, because you can go as fast as you like. There are no black holes. It's just Newton can't explain everything, which is different than Newton can't do everything.
By do, I meant explain. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
By do, I meant explain.
I mean, I suppose I could put it as a sort of dilemma. If we're just saying natural selection is not fundamental, that it's just true in some non-fundamental story of reality, well, then I don't think that gets around the Don's argument, because Don's argument isn't saying, appealing to what's self-defeating or not in some non-fundamental story. But if you say, no, it's just not really true. It's just not really true. Well, then I'm worried, because we need it to be true, to explain apparent design. So either way, there's something going wrong here, I think. That's yeah.
If you enjoyed that clip, then the full podcast is out right now. You can click around here. Enjoy. Subscribe to Theories of Everything to get notified of upcoming podcasts, as there are new full-length podcasts every week on the topics of mathematics, physics, consciousness, free will, and AI.